I want to welcome back to our program Allison Bach with United Laguna Woods Mutual. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
You just got back from Switzerland,
yes,
but you're engaged right back into the board activities, and you guys have a lot of candidates to talk about.
Yes.
So every year there's a board election. Why is it every year? Why isn't it every 2 years or whatever?
Or 4
or
years.
4 years and
yeah.
that kind of thing.
It's part of the bylaws, and it makes a lot of sense for a community like ours. Mm-hmm. We have 11 board members, and by having annual elections where part of the board rolls over potentially, we have a breadth of experience. We have new people who can come in. Mm-hmm. Also, maybe some folks get tired of it and it gives them a chance to step off. So it's a good way to broaden the understanding in the community of board activities, get people to participate. And by the way, publicity works, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
guys got a lot of candidates.
Yeah, it's great.
You're going to have 4 directors coming in, and
right.
they're going to be assumedly brand new folks in here. And so as a veteran, as somebody who's been on the board, how do you guys kind of help mentor the new folks in terms of the ways things work on the board, in terms of how they have to get involved, what they need to learn and understand?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question, because it's a complicated and sometimes a very surprising process to new directors. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we do have formal board training. We do have a big fat book of rules and familiarizations that people go through. We have training session with our attorney, Jeff Beaumont, and it's a formalized process that brings people into the understanding of what it means to be a director. It's quite different from what they might have thought.
Right. Now 11 seems like a large number. Why not 7 or 9 or 5 or what kind of, is there a reason for the 11?
Yeah,
is just one of those things
it's an odd number.
That's the way, it's an odd number. No,
right,
I know why it's an odd number, but it seems a little large, but it's just one of those things where they wanted to have, and again for every year of the turnover kind of thing too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, when you think of it, we do have 6,323 manors and resident units.
Right.
So to have 11 for that number.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Now, these 4 directors are going to serve till 2027. That's a big commitment to kind of take a bite off of, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And so they really need to take that into account in terms of what their lifestyle is and the health and all those kind of things, and how active they can be, because you're not just coming to a meeting once a month. You are serving on committees. You are going to a lot of other meetings. You're building agendas, right? So it's a task. Talk to me a little bit about what it takes to be a board member for folks who don't quite understand.
Well, first of all, the eligibility to run for office is pretty minimal. One has to be a resident in good standing, meaning no outstanding bills, not be married to another director or partnered, and so the minimal qualifications are there. But to actually do the job, one has to be, first of all, able to read and understand and comprehend complex materials, legal documents, resolutions, bylaws, and so on. Secondly, you have to be willing to put the commitment of time and effort into it, because there's weekly homework. It's not just the meetings, the formalized meetings of committee or board, but it's almost, every single day you're thinking about what's going on. Another thing is that you have to be willing to think big. And not just about what the narrow interests of maybe your social group or your friends or your clubs have in mind, but the whole community.
Right.
There are over 9,000 people who live in United, so you really have to take into consideration the needs of all.
Right. And you have to look down the future, down the road, right? Hey, what are we going to be in 40 years, 50 years? I might not even be on this earth at that point, but you want to have the long-term interest of the community in mind when you're making decisions like raising fees and doing infrastructure repairs. You can't just keep kicking the can down the road.
Correct. And the fiduciary duty is a very serious one. And that means that one has to act for the common good, not the individual good, but for the good of all, and take fiduciary duty very seriously.
So let's talk a little bit about the election process. You have 10 candidates, and we're going to talk about meeting, how you guys folks can meet them a little bit. But the process, it's an outside company that kind of runs these elections for you, right?
Yes, Yep.
And how does that work exactly?
Well, they are contracted by us to run the election according to the state laws and to our own bylaws. And they are in charge of making sure that we have a fair and honest election. They run the election itself, the balloting, the mailing, the collection of balloting, tabulation, People can be sure that this is going to be a very fair and balanced process. The main thing is that nominees filed their applications by the end of June.
Right, which they did.
Which they did, thank goodness. Thank you all for doing that. And they submitted a 250-word candidate statement that sort of has become their platform.
Yeah, and that's kind of what those are their words to live by throughout the whole election process, right?
Exactly, yeah. And the statement also includes something about their background, their skill set, what other experiences they've had in work and in personal lives, and what their sense of purpose is in wanting to join the board. Now, coming up, we will start to see these people out and about in the village campaigning.
The campaigning can begin right now, right?
Yep,
They've been
it
qualified
can.
as candidates, and they are going to be on the ballot. Their statements are out there, so they can do that.
Yeah.
What are some of the do's and don'ts in terms of the campaigning process, I guess?
Well, most clubs, organizations, don't allow candidates to come in and politic during their meetings.
Speak to the club meetings and those kind of things.
But they can be outside. So often they are greeting people outside the meeting room, saying hello, maybe distributing literature about themselves. And people can produce written statements that they can distribute. Some people have distributed those to doorways, placed them on the door, under the doormat, but not in and through, and definitely not in the mailboxes.
Okay.
So that's a big no-no.
No.
Now, we want to have a fair and an even playing field for all. So one of the most important things will be that Meet the Candidates event that comes up at the end of August. And TV6 is really important to us.
That's
for
right.
that.
We'll be broadcasting that one.
Yeah. Over and over again, I hope. Yeah.
Now, can candidates get mailing lists or
Yes.
somehow do that if they wanted to do their own
Yes.
mailers and that kind of thing,
Yes,
and email lists and things like that?
Yes, they can.
And so when folks feel like maybe they're getting spammed a little bit, or like, how are these things getting in my mailbox? That is one of the ways that candidates are allowed to do that.
That is correct.
No one should be surprised by that when those start hitting. How do they get my address?
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to know the rules, of course, they can go and look at the rules at lagunawoodsvillage.com/resident/United Mutual. But go to that site and you'll see all the rules for folks.
Exactly. Yep.
So let's talk about some of the deadlines we have coming up for this election.
Boy,
And
yeah.
there's a lot of them, right?
Yes, indeed.
The ballots have to be mailed by the 27th.
All right,
And
August,
so-
yes.
August 27th,
Right.
the ballots are going to be out there in mail. So when are people getting the ballots receiving? Have they already started to receive them now that you have the candidate's name, or they're going out
No, they're
soon?
going to actually, sometimes people find that they have to withdraw. So they have until July 26th to make a decision if they've decided, no, this really isn't for
maybe
me,
this
or
isn't for
something's
me.
happened, and
Right.
I'm not going to run. So during the month of August, we'll see who's actually still in the race, so to speak, and the ballots will be printed and mailed by August 27th. Then the balloting can start right then and there afterwards. They're either mailed back or deposited in a safe box right in the community center downstairs here for counting later on.
And so those are collected, and that done by the company, the outside company that
Yes,
is hired. So no, it's not like
No.
board members are going there grabbing them.
No,
and
nobody
so
is- no,
just in
yeah.
terms of the how they're carried through. There's never a time when anybody else is looking
Correct.
at these things except for the company who's running
Right.
the election for
That
United,
is
right?
correct. Yep.
Just to be clear on that. And
Yep.
so then the ballots are going to be counted, like you said, tabulation, and that is going to be announced right then and there on the tabulation night.
On the 27th, on Friday the 27th, the ballots are counted and the announcement is made. And then on Tuesday, October 8th, the new board is actually seated.
And then they get that 4-year term.
Then
The real fun begins.
Yes, exactly.
So the confirmed list of candidates for folks who maybe haven't noticed or haven't
Yeah.
seen this, so we got that list here. A lot of names on here. I know you're not here to endorse anybody, but
No.
we got Maggie Blackwell, Pardis Brumand, Marie Collins, Jeannie Costello, Alan Dickinson, Max oh my goodness. Garzarse?
I think so, yeah.
Hassan Gafshi, Anthony Liberatore, Abbas Mohammadi, and Charles Prater, it looks like.
Right.
I'm sorry if I got anybody's names a little messed up. That was
Yeah.
my first read through on that one myself.
Yeah.
And so those are the candidates. Now, how can we learn about the candidates, especially how to pronounce their names? That's an important one.
Yes,
That's
indeed.
coming up on
Right.
August 23rd.
Right, August 23rd, meet the candidates. It'll be in the boardroom. And there will be an interview where current board members get to ask questions of the candidates. They get to respond. It's a very disciplined and time-limited kind of event. No one is allowed to dominate. Everybody gets an equal chance to talk.
You guys are running a clock kind of thing.
Yes, indeed.
Time is up.
Sure, yeah, we're cut off. And then everybody gets to make a 2-minute final statement. And that, again, is there like why you should vote for me. And so that's a very important meeting for everybody. It can be nerve-wracking because it's televised.
It's televised, and you're in front of, you're trying to make a good impression to the residents who are you're depending on their vote. Tell me what it was like for you the first time you ran and the first time you did this. What was it like? What did it feel like? Were you nervous? Did you have a bunch of stuff prepared?
For me, it was sort of peculiar because I did it via Zoom. I was in Switzerland at the time, so I really was insulated from the excitement of it all. And it was about, I think, midnight or something for me, and I was just, answering questions as they came in. So I'm not a good test. But many people do find it thrilling, shall we say, a thrilling kind of experience. And if they're not used to speaking to a large group or speaking from the dais, it can be a little intimidating. So practice, get ready. Rehearse. Yeah.
When you decided to run, what was your motivation? I mean, we're going to see a lot of candidate statements. I'm sure you had one and the reason. But what made you say, you know what, I'm gonna put in a lot of work for the next 4 years. I'm gonna instead of enjoying my retirement.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I had done it before in other communities where I lived. I had been president of my condo board in Florida. I'd been president and treasurer of my co-op boards in Manhattan and New York City. So I've been doing this for years in other places. And there's a lot of similarity among these kinds of organizations. These HOAs tend to have similar rules, even if they're in different states. And I like doing it. And I like the fiduciary aspect because my background is in finance. So I felt I had something that I could contribute here. And I was familiar with the Golden Rain Foundation from the 1980s when I was privileged to help out with money management for Golden Rain Foundation in Seal Beach.
Oh, okay.
When I was working as a financial advisor at the time with Merrill Lynch. So I had that experience as well. So I knew the community or knew something about it more than other people might. So.
And how important is it, and I'm not going to talk about what side somebody's on in their opinions, how important is it for the candidates to really be working in the best interest? Even if you may have differing opinions on what that best interest might be, but they're really they're there to serve. Instead of having maybe their own agenda kind of thing that we kind of sometimes think of when sometimes we have a candidate out there. How important is it when you come on there, you have to think about the community?
That is critical. That really is critical. You have to be dispassionate. You have to be balanced and fair. You have to be willing to listen to all sides and come to a decision. Now, sometimes people say, oh, this is so overwhelming. There's so much information. I don't know anything about this. How can I possibly decide? And that's where the reasonable person rule comes in. And the state of California in the code says that directors need to, of any corporation, especially a nonprofit, have to be capable of making a reasonable person decision. We cannot be experts on things we know nothing about, or up to this point. But we can make a reasonable person decision, and that's what we have to do.
There you go. So candidate considerations when voting. What should people be thinking about in terms of here's the best candidate? And I'm not saying these are the rules. I'm just saying these are some ideas of what somebody should be thinking about as they consider each candidate and what their platform and what they have to say up there.
Well, that's why we're talking about this today, which is so early in the election cycle, it would seem. Because I hope that over the next few weeks, as people listen to candidates, get to see them, get to meet them maybe, they'll start to evaluate things like, does this person have some experience with other not-for-profit boards, for example? Do they seem to be capable of reading, understanding complex materials, and then communicating about them in a way that's understandable? Do they seem to understand the time commitment that's involved in being on this board? Do they seem to have a realistic idea about budget and finances? And are they prepared to make some tough decisions if necessary? Can they communicate clearly and comprehensively and respectfully with each other? And do they seem to be energetic enough to do the work and be part of a team?
Absolutely. Work collegially is certainly an important one.
Yeah, it is. It is.
What would you say to yourself? What was the biggest surprise? Maybe when you were first on an HOA in the condo, or what was the biggest surprise about what the job takes to do?
Other than the time commitment, I think the biggest surprise was that I almost felt like my individual rights to speak about anything I wanted to, in any way that I wanted to, were now under control a little bit. I had to stop and think, is this the way the board feels? Do I really have the right to say this without checking with other people?
Right.
You know, and so it's that sense of like, this is a we deal. It's not a me deal. It's a we deal.
And I imagine in the community, as you're out in the community, when somebody comes up to you, can you believe they didn't pick up the trash? Or can you believe the way the leaves are? You're not thinking as an individual, independent person. You are thinking as, I'm a board member, and so I can't be saying, yeah, that is garbage. What is going on over there? You know, and those kinds of things,
and then to be able to resist pressure from people who say, "Oh, you're on the board. Take care of this for me."
With the people walks whispering in your ear, kind of thing. Hey, can you take care of this? And I think that's one of the misconceptions about serving on the board is that oh, great, I know that board member. Now I'm going to get all these things fixed or all these things that I want to have done. It's not the way it works.
Reality sets in. Reality sets in fast.
So as the ballots go out, there's always some challenge. Hey, I didn't get a ballot, or oops, I threw mine away, or it was raining that day and it's my ballot got soaking wet. What should folks do if they're having a challenge with their ballot? They don't know where it is.
Well, there's of course the contact number with Unelect, because they are the inspector and they are running the election for us. So there's a number that will be published. Everyone will be getting a brochure about how to do this when they get their ballot. So there will be the 888 number for contact, 866 number, and then just to, call to get a replacement. Again, one ballot per household. So if you've got a partner, you've got to agree on how you're going to vote.
Figure out what you're going to do. The whole house doesn't get, the cat doesn't get a vote, the dog doesn't get a vote. You have your own debate internally. You'll have a candidates debate inside the house.
Pick two.
Makes sense a lot. So what, as we're talking about this, here you are, what last meeting you guys had, what were some of the things that you would say were the highlights from the last United Board meeting?
Well, I think that in general, the concern has been, of course, the 2025 budget.
Right, I was going to say that has to be it.
It's a big deal. And we had a very productive meeting yesterday afternoon where we looked at version 2 of the budget. It's just a case of looking at the challenge of higher prices for commodities and for labor. We live in one of the most expensive and desirable counties in the United States. Things are not cheap here, and we don't get any special deals. So we have to be aware of those higher prices and how it's going to translate.
Right.
We also have a special ad hoc committee that has just started to work that's looking for additional sources of revenue that United can generate. And that's being run by Tony Liberatore, and there's a meeting this afternoon, an open meeting. All ideas are welcome as to what else can we do to raise revenue rather than just always go to the shareholders.
And what does that look like? What are some of the ideas that were floated around on that? Is like raising fees for certain amenities that you go to? Oh, we're going to charge this much for the next concert or that kind of thing.
Well, that's a GRF issue.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to figure out. So where within the confines of United Laguna Woods Mutual can those things happen?
Boy, that's the challenge, isn't it?
I mean, come down to the ad hoc committee.
I haven't attended the meeting. I'm coming to it this afternoon, but the idea is, what is it that we can do under state law as a not-for-profit and within our confines of our bylaws to raise revenues? So there are a lot of ideas. I've looked at a list of about 19, and people have been kind enough to keep sending me ideas. like open a shop, do some branded merchandise. I mean, those are the easy ones.
Sure, sure.
Set up a foundation so that we can receive gifts of real estate or money or whatever. So there are just a lot of ideas, but as to what's practical and what's legal, that's where we're sorting through that.
That's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, exactly.
Allison Bach from United Mutual, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh,
Great
a pleasure.
information, lots of good candidate stuff, and
Yeah.
you're working hard, I know, so keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you very much. A pleasure to be here.
Good to see you. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Friday movie. Stay with us.